Okay, fellas, welcome back to some more SBC gaming news, and we have a lot of news to cover for today. My hair is a little bit poofy because if I wash it in the evening and sleep on it, it turns into this. Anyways, this is my second take. I added some more news items. Let me know if these episodes are way too long. I do plan on keeping it a lot shorter in the future. It's just that I have a huge backlog of news to go through today. Anyways, as always, I'll start with comments and then I will go through new hardware, buyer advice, bugs, fixes, and updates, user creations, and then a channel spotlight if I have one. And everything will be timestamped below so you can skip around. Also, I will link all the sources I've used that you see in this video so you can go take a look at it yourself. Now, if it doesn't fit in the 5,000 character description limit for YouTube, I'll put it in a paste bin and I'll link that as well. Alright, let's start with comments. So we have some nice comments. Ilkar Yordas, good advice about not pre-ordering, especially with retro handhelds. Hardware manufacturing is not easy. So I have a lot of bookmarks, trust me. Like when I say I have a lot of bookmarks, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of news I have to go through and I'm sorting through. And sometimes like I bookmark something and I forget that I bookmarked it until later. But anyways, I think I went into about like reasons why you shouldn't pre-order anything, especially with these handheld companies, because the first batch is usually the worst. I'm going to get into that with the RG Cube. But yeah, I have a video somewhere of like showcasing the Anbernic manufacturing plant, and I'm sure they like made the footage look a lot better, but essentially how these devices are made is, for the most part, it's just dudes and dudettes sitting on like these uncomfortable plastic benches. They put a cushion on top of it and they're assembling everything by hand. So, okay, it's all made by hand, fellas. So that's why sometimes, things aren't that great. When you work in a factory and you're working long hours, you might make a mistake here and there. You might not care about what you're doing because you're not getting paid well. If you want to read about the working conditions in Foxconn, yeah. It sounds terrible. Anyways, thanks for the comment, Ilker. I hope you're liking the M17. And yeah, I'm waiting for some custom firmware to come out so I can make my review for it. But yeah, I still think it's a pretty decent handheld. Alright, we got this comment from Levi Boom 0932. The future of gaming handhelds looks promising with all these releases. Nice video, man. Hey, thanks for saying that, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, honestly speaking, the retro handheld scene is only growing stronger and these devices are only growing more powerful. If you remember the devices that were out back then, they were kind of pricey and they couldn't do much. And nowadays, it's not, it'd be considered normal to have like a PS2 capable device for roughly around $200, $300. That's insane. Gerardo Facundo 6721 Sound Advice Bro, thanks for the video. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. As always, whenever I give advice, you don't have to listen to it. It's just me seeing all the experiences people had online and then my own experiences, and I mention it just so people can be informed and not get caught unawares. Like if they get a bad micro SD card and their device won't boot, they'll know why. Or if they pre-order the earliest batches of a handheld and there's a lot of problems, now they know why. So I'm just trying to inform people as much as possible, and then you can make whatever decision you want. We got another comment from Gerardo Facundo 6721. Appreciate the SD card ordering tips. Learned something new today. Appreciate that, man. Thank you for the kind words. Once again, if you're in America and you're buying from a listing that says shipped and sold by Amazon, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a reliable card. It's because of something called commingled inventory, where if you look at that listing, any other company that is also shipping from Amazon shares the same inventory pool. So even if you order from Amazon as a seller, they'll pull it from the same pile, and that pile could have counterfeits because another company could have brought them into Amazon. That's why you have to be very careful. That's why it's better to buy from a listing where there are no sellers sharing the inventory with Amazon. it doesn't 100% guarantee it, but it's like 99.99% guaranteed you'll get an actual card. Now, if you get a counterfeit, even ordering from a listing like that, that means Amazon's doing something sketchy with the inventory, or there is some way to insert counterfeits from their supply chain, which is very worrisome. And if that's the case, you can't trust nothing from Amazon. But yeah, so far I've ordered Samsung cards from Amazon. I've ordered them because that was the only listing where Amazon was the only seller that was shipping from Amazon as well. And I tested it myself, and those are legitimate cards. As far as I know, obviously counterfeiters can counterfeit the little technology inside the chips, where if you put it in to verify it, then it'll give a false positive. But I don't think they would go through that much effort, because at that point you're pretty much making a good SD card. Alright, we got this comment from FSZT6TM. Definitely going to wait for later batches of the SP. Haven't been keeping up with the Anbernic devices, but does Anbernic usually release new colorways in later batches? Now, I've only been keeping track of these retro handheld devices for roughly 6 months. And as far as I know, Anbernic has not released new colorways. They have released like a metal version. But yeah, I haven't seen new colorways coming later. I think Ilker mentioned this here. I'm not sure about Anbernic specifically, but others sometimes do, like the Datafrog SF2000 and R36S. Yeah, the R36S got a red one, and then there's like a transparent blue for the Philippines, I believe. Those colors do look nice. But yeah, I got a yellow Datafrog, so I am waiting for the multi-core, the firmware scene to kind of stabilize, and then when it gets to a point where like Game Boy Advance can run smoothly, like 100% of the time, I want to release my review on that device. Alright, we got one more comment. So I made a guide about how to use your phone to upgrade your stock OS for the H700 chip series for Anbernic. Like for the RG35 2024, the H, the Plus, the SP, and the 28XX all can be upgraded using your phone, except there's one problem. For the latest firmware for stock mod, it only upgrades for the 28XX, the lossless upgrade method. So I looked it up, and I was a little worried because I was like, oh no, I didn't see the update, because I write the script for the guide a couple of days before, and then I record the voiceover, and then I do the editing last. So I didn't know there was another update. So I checked it out, and I think that is the case. But thankfully, when you click on the download link, and then you go to the upgrade package, it only has the upgrade package for that handheld. So if you're using that Google Drive link, you should be safe. But if you just download the latest versions from somewhere else and then try to install it, I think it may have some unwanted consequences. I don't know if it's going to ruin the SD card. But yeah, first of all, thank you Melv for bringing that to Melv Lee, sorry. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate it. And yeah, I was worried because, you know, when I make a guide, I wanted to help people. I was worried that they will listen to this guide and break their system. I'm using the term break incorrectly because that's more related to corrupting the low level firmware to the point where you cannot use your device anymore. But people use the term break when they mean they can't boot from the device anymore. But it's easy to fix. You just reflash the SD card. But I was really worried because I was like, oh no, like what if people listen to my advice and then they can't play their system anymore? Because these are people without access to PCs. That would suck, right? So I was sweating, but it's safe. The guide is still okay. Just make sure you follow the Google Drive link for the specific handle you have, and then you shouldn't run into those issues. But I really like this comment. Thank you for bringing that up because it's a PSA. That's why I'm going to keep it pinned so that people don't download the latest version and ignore like which version of the handle you have. Because if you do that, you may run into some issues. Okay, before we start, I'm gonna jump into a few posts that I thought were funny or informative or of note. So a while back, I featured a post where someone received 2 A buttons on their SP, and this person got Bs, 2 Bs. So there's someone saying someone out there got 2 Bs. There's a commenter, I forgot who it was. And apparently there was someone who got 2 X's, but yeah, this is from Dare Huston in the Anbernic subreddit, and they got 2 Bs. So that's hilarious. It did happen. So I think it was the previous episode where I covered a post where someone claimed their SP caught on fire, and looks like that post is true. So I remember in the comment section, the guy was saying that he just used the charger that worked for his Mini Plus, etc. But I'm gonna take a guess and say it was not a 5V 1.5 amp charger. I think it was probably something with PD or quick charging, because this post from Snoo74895 in the Anbernic subreddit, they were reporting that they were using Apple PD capable USB-C to USB-C power charger cable with a generic 65 watt brick, and the outputs are 5V, 9V, 12V, and 20V. And so when they were charging it, it almost caught on fire. So the battery kind of puffed up, and it was generating so much heat that it deformed the plastic housing. As you can see here, there's a lot of... it's all bent out of shape. It was producing that much heat. And then I believe the power IC was blown as well. Or maybe it was just an integrated circuit of some sort. Yeah, step down voltage converter. So we're taking a look here. That's kind of scary. I would not use that battery again because it probably got some serious heat damage. So they're diving into why this would happen. And yeah, I know you hear this a lot if you go to these subreddits, and a lot of people say this advice: use a USB-A to USB-C cable. And if you're going to use a brick, use a 5V 1.5 amp brick, or use your laptop or PC. And I know that advice is, you know, it's like road. Everyone says it all the time like a mantra, but the thing is, it's better to do that than to have your house burned down. Like, I'm just being serious here. And so it's like, why take the risk? I just don't understand the mentality, because I see a lot of people say, oh, it should work. You know, these devices should have some protection built in. There's a handshake protocol, and if the handshake protocol fails, the brick reverts to a lower voltage. You know, the brick only provides a pool of power for the device to draw on, which is incorrect. I'm going to go over why. But yeah, why take the risk of your house burning down when all you have to do is buy a cheap 5V brick and a USB-A to USB-C cable and have the minor inconvenience of having another cable and a brick? Oh no. You know, like... also, like, I'm not defending Anbernic here. I think, like I always mention, these manufacturers cut corners, resulting in potential danger to the consumer. And honestly, they should build it better because it doesn't cost too much. But they're not going to do it. The only way they're going to change their behaviors if we as consumers, all of us, stop buying their products and tell them, hey, can you not make it so that this is a fire hazard? And if we stop paying for these devices, then they'll make some changes, right? But the problem is people won't stop buying it. So the only real solution is to use a 5V 1.5 amp charging brick, and that's the most realistic solution. We're not going to have people do micro soldering. The average consumer who buys these products they're not capable of doing that. It's pretty difficult. I'm comfortable with soldering, but I don't want to mess with a bunch of micro soldering, especially if it involves power. I don't have the confidence for that. But yeah, there's one comment here where I didn't agree with it, but here, this comment was saying, you know, use a proper block. People say that it's literally people's only response. And my point is this: how can you fix this problem, right? Like, what's the easiest way to fix this problem and make sure the consumer doesn't have their house burned down? Is to use a 5V brick. Like, once again, Anbernic's not gonna fix the problem until we as consumers stop buying the product and demand they make fixes to this. We're not gonna do that. I know, because I read the subreddits. Everyone has a problem with consuming. They buy handhelds that they don't even play, okay? So this problem is not going to stop because people are going to keep paying for it. Also, the average consumer doesn't visit the subreddits. They just watch videos on YouTube, on TikTok, so they don't know that this is an issue. So if anything, it's to increase the knowledge of having to use these older chargers. I know it sounds annoying, but Anbernic's not going to fix the problem. The average consumer is not going to solder their own product and fix it themselves. It's going to be out of the grasp of most people. So the only real solution we have is to use these older charging bricks. Okay, so here's a post from Living Promise 8446. Anyone who's concerned about overcharging their SP's battery, this block provides the exact output value that is recommended for juicing the device. 5 volts, 1.5 amp. This is a pretty good spec for a charger, and there's a lot of people here who are saying this. This is incorrect. Sorry, Strange Crunchy One, but it does actually push current. I'm going to show you how, according to actual physics, Ohm's law, right? It does not provide a pool of power for the device to draw from, and I'm going to show that. That's a misconception people have, and I don't know where it came from because that is just factually incorrect. Anyways, for the last one, we got Gundam Jehutikai. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but yeah. This was posted in the Anbernic subreddit. Lesson learned: the SP scratches pretty easily. So if you ordered a silver SP, just be aware that the paint does scratch off pretty easily, so you may want to keep it in some sort of case or a sock. But anyways, why don't we go over what people are saying about these charging bricks is just factually incorrect. Now, I may be incorrect as well, but I wanted to put this information out there, and you can look it up yourself. If you don't want to bother looking this stuff up and learning about it, at the very least, get one of those USB power reading devices. You might see it in like review videos or some of the posts where you put your charging cable into the device, and then that device plugs into your device, your handheld, and it shows you the voltage, the current, and the power draw. And you can use that to verify that the device is working correctly, so you don't see any over voltage. All right. But here's why this bothers me, because how this generally works is you have a power supply, and when you first learn about this stuff, I got a degree in electrical engineering. It's been a while, so I might be a little bit rusty on this stuff or get some stuff wrong, but the general idea is here. But when you're learning about this stuff at the very beginning, the kind of illustration or imagery people use is the imagery of water. Now, it's not a one-to-one relation, and obviously, if people are electrical engineers, they may get the nuances of the actual physics of water incorrect, but it's just to help you visualize how it works, right? So when people refer to voltage is equated with potential, and that's talking about the difference in the potential energy stored via electrons. So imagine if you have a canister of water here, and there's 2 canisters, and they're connected by a pipe. This has like this much water, and this has this much water. There's a difference here, right? There's a huge difference. So obviously water is going to flow from this canister into this canister until they're roughly even, right? And when they're even, there's no more water flowing. That's when your battery's out of charge. So obviously it's not one-to-one, but that's kind of the idea. So the difference there, it causes the electrons to flow, and that's where you get your power from. Now, we have Ohm's law. So voltage equals current times resistance. That's Ohm's law. And what this means is the voltage is directly proportional to the current. So the voltage induces the current. So when there's a greater difference in potential, there's a greater flow of electrons. So for example, for these charging bricks, if it doesn't default to 5 volts and it goes to a higher voltage somehow, which does happen according to these posts, we're going to see a greater current induced. So it does not pull current, okay? The current is induced by the voltage. That is incorrect when people say it pulls from the available pool of power. It doesn't work like that. Okay, it's like there's a huge waterfall, and you're like, oh no, I'm just gonna bring a bucket and just take what I need. No, the waterfall is gonna hit you in the face and wash you away. Okay, you can't stop the flow of current. So you know, when you're starting out, you know, ECE 101, whatever, they always give you this simple circuit, right? You give it numbers like voltage 1, resistance 1, current 1. And then usually this resembles your power source, right? It's symbolizing your power source. And they'll say something like, oh, this is 5 volts. And then your resistor is like 3 ohms, right? And they're like, what's the current? So you just put it into the equation. We have 5 equals I1 times 3. So I1 equals 5 divided by 3 amps. I forgot to use the units, but that's okay. Alright, so what happens if your power source all of a sudden is outputting 15 amps, even though it's not supposed to? Because these manufacturers don't build their devices correctly. Okay, so V1 is now 15, your total resistance does not change. Okay, unless you have a potentiometer or some sort of circuitry built in, your resistance does not change. Okay, so according to those posters, even though we have 15 volts, our current should remain the same, right? That is just factually incorrect. We can just show it through the math now. So I1 equals 15 divided by 3. 5 amps is greater than this, okay? They're not equivalent. So I hope people stop saying this nonsense, because if the handshake protocol fails, if there's something wrong with the power IC, if there's something wrong with the circuitry, and there usually is, if you get a higher voltage, you're going to induce a higher current, and that's where the problems start. So these devices don't have that high of a redundancy level. In fact, very few devices do. In fact, you know, you'll see devices that say this only takes 5 volts, 3 amps, right? So if you go over 5 volts, you're going to get some issues. So the thing about this though is that the current is directly proportional to the voltage. So if the charging brick says, oh, 5 volts, 3 amps, that should be okay, because I can't think of a situation where you have the same voltage, but you're inducing a greater current. So hopefully this sort of clears things up. This is very basic, rudimentary. Obviously, the reality is much more complicated because you have integrated circuits that do more than just simply provide a resistance, you know? And yeah, but I hope this shows why you want to use a proper, by proper, I mean like a 5 volt brick if the device says it can only use up to 5 volts. These power delivery charging bricks, it's not going to be guaranteed to work correctly. And the only way to make sure it's working correctly is to get those devices and measure the actual power draw, and make sure it's not going over the safe limit for voltage and current and power. If you want to know another equation, power equals current times voltage. So P equals IV, and usually you use watts for power. The equations are very simple, but if you want to learn about it, it does get complicated pretty fast. It's pretty fun. You learn about logic tables. This is all the freshman year level stuff. And then when you go to upper level courses, you know, you can actually learn about building your own chip, building your own PC. And by your own processor, I'm talking about like the super basic, like old school processors. There's classes where you can actually make your own digital signal processing, all of that. So electrical engineering covers a lot of topics. Very fun. Most of it's based on physics with a combination of hardware, a little bit of software. And once you start learning, you realize that a lot of people are just making this stuff up. Whatever they're saying online, they're just pulling out of thin air. Has no basis on any fact or experience. I don't know where these things are coming from. Like people saying that these, you know, power delivery charging bricks are safe, that devices only pull the power that they need from an available pool of power. That's not how it works. Okay, now we're going into new devices, and I added some, so apologies, this episode is going to be pretty long. We have this post from KeyBrilliant5623. New Magic XU Mini comparison images rumored to be available for purchase July 10th. So this handle I was actually looking forward to, and I'm going to cover the MIUI 830 next episode. Apparently it's gotten a lot better thanks to custom firmware made by 10 levels. I forgot the username, but they're very active in the MIUI subreddit, and they made their own stock mod essentially, and it seems to be pretty good. Anyways, the reason why I was interested in the Magic XU Mini is that we can see the proper size now. The buttons seem to be either the same size or slightly smaller, but it seems to be a little bit more sizable compared to the 830 and the 28XX, and the layout seems a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, theoretically speaking, it should have more power, but we won't know because, once again, allegedly, Magic XU lied about the specs for their previous handheld, so we'll see if it actually has a chipset they claim it's going to have. But yeah, I was keeping an eye out for this. A lot of people like the mini versions of the handhelds, and this may be a decent one to get, but we won't know until it actually comes out. So this one also blew my mind. So this is also from KeyBrilliant5623 in the SBC Gaming subreddit. The post is titled Rotating Screen Handheld Sugar Cube in Action. So I thought this was vaporware. I covered it a long while back, and I thought it wasn't going to come out because the idea was kind of, it seemed pointless to me, to be honest. So the screen is not even 4:3. I forgot what aspect ratio it is, but it's almost 1:1, and the screen rotates. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing ever. Why would you rotate essentially a square screen? It's not going to make much of a difference, right? This is from Twitter, but I like this other post here. This was posted by Nude Runner in the SBC Gaming subreddit. The post is titled Small Universe Handheld by Sugar Cubes, June 19, 2024. And here's the video they link. This is from a YouTube channel, Nara Makes Games. And yeah, it actually does make a little bit of a difference. It's noticeable for some games. I'll play here, but there's one thing that is kind of, it's a little bit concerning to me. That does look like rear firing speakers, which I absolutely hate if it is. It seems to be made out of metal, and according to a comment here, I believe it's going to be Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor, which is going to make it super expensive. And the guy tries to rotate the screen, right? It only rotates one direction, and you have to rotate it back the same way. And there's some times where he tries to rotate it the other way, and it won't. So I wonder how many people are going to break this. I don't know how secure or reliable that connection is. And when you listen to the sound, it's metal on metal, and it doesn't sound nice. That said, yeah, it looks pretty interesting, but honestly speaking, like, I don't know how practical it is because pretty much you would want to keep it more horizontal oriented for most of the games other than arcade games. So you would make it vertical if you're playing arcade games. But in that case, like, I would just prefer to get a vertically oriented system just made for arcades. Cause like, if you look, if you look at the specs and the fact that it looks like it's all metal, it's gonna be expensive. So I don't think it's gonna be worth shelling out the extra money. In fact, you could probably buy 2 dedicated handhelds for each screen orientation and have it be cheaper than the total price of this. But we'll wait and see if it comes out still. But seeing an actual like model makes it more likely that it's gonna come out. I thought it wasn't gonna come out. I thought it was fake, so I guess I was wrong about that. I'm surprised. Okay, so there's another handheld, but it's actually 3 handhelds in one. I couldn't find the post. I'll post it next week. But essentially, Powkiddy is making a console called the V10. It's supposed to come out end of June. And the interesting thing about this is that it has a 3:2 aspect ratio screen. So this is perfect for Game Boy Advance. I don't really care too much because, I don't know, like, I played it on devices that don't have a 3:2 aspect ratio, and obviously for the scaling, if you don't use integer scaling, sometimes the pixels are a little bit off. But the reality is, unless you like pause the game and bring up like a microscope to it and take macro shots, you're not gonna notice too much. Like, I'm playing the games because the games are fun, not because it's quote unquote pixel perfect. That just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense that someone's gonna enjoy a game less because one pixel may be off. All right, I don't think people play games for that reason. But people play games because they're fun, not because of how the pixels are arranged. You know. But this post comes from Billy. So I would recommend checking out this spreadsheet. I would bookmark this spreadsheet because it is one of the most handy tools to have in terms of keeping track of which consoles are coming out and when and all the specs. The emulation performance ratings can be a little bit outdated because enhancements in the custom operating system scene can make it perform a lot better. Like, for example, the Mii Mini Plus couldn't play DS games, but now it can play them fairly well, I would say, arguably well. Another thing too, so I know some people might feel overwhelmed with all these handhelds coming out, but the reality is they're using the same chipset. So it's just like, oh, they may look a little bit different, but in terms of like the actual performance level, they're all similar. It comes down to like which company has a slightly better build quality and which one might have features that you're looking for in terms of like something super specific, like the screen aspect ratio. But anyways, why don't we go take a look at the post? So I can't read this, but here's the Powkiddy V10. Apparently they have a horizontal version. I don't know if this has the same screen, but if this is a 3x2 aspect ratio screen, I would probably prefer the horizontal one. This one, while it looks pretty okay, it doesn't look very ergonomic because of how short this section is. When you're holding a console to play, you know, for a vertical form factor, you're going to support it from the bottom mostly with your pinkies or your ring finger. So you want it to have enough height so you can comfortably do that. If it's that small, you might have to use your middle fingers. So we'll wait and see. But I know people like the 280V, which has a similar form factor. They also have a handheld coming out with the Helio G99, and this is apparently it. Not a lot of details, but if you use Google Translate here, we see that the V10 is mentioned. It's going to have the RK3326, which we know the performance level of. It's not going to be too powerful. And a 3.5-inch screen with a perfect aspect ratio for Game Boy Advance games. Now they do mention there's going to be, again, a G99 console. Yeah, I didn't hear a lot about it, but there you go. You know, this might be the first time you hear about it. Okay, now we're moving on to the Odin 2 Mini. There's a lot of coverage now, so if you're interested in a handheld, there's a lot of reviews that show you a lot of information. We got one from Retro Game Core, and he seemed to like it. Yeah, the one takeaway that I got was that the mini LED screen, the brightness level is great if you're playing outdoors. But in terms of like how it actually looks visually, it doesn't seem to offer much benefit over a regular IPS LCD display. Most of the reviews mention the vignetting, so the corners are a little bit dark. But I did hear most reviewers didn't notice it when playing games, so it depends on how sensitive you are to it. And then another thing people mention is blooming. So it might be talking about a little bit of light bleed on the side, or because of how the screen works, when there's something like really dark and then really bright and you increase the brightness, it tries to compensate for that, and then it creates kind of like a glowing effect around the things that are supposed to be bright in a dark background. So again, most of the reviewers didn't seem to be bothered by it, but it might depend on how sensitive you are to those things. We have another review here if you want to check it out. Joey's Retro Handhelds also made a review, and they try to show off the blooming and the vignetting. I forgot, there's another reviewer that did a rather technical breakdown on the screen. It might have been Retro Tech Dad. But yeah, there's other reviewers who go in depth on how the screen performs. Alright, now we're going to go into the RG Cube. So it's been about 2 weeks since I released the last episode, so this stuff is a little bit outdated, but I think it's still relevant. We got this post by Jarfanky715 in the Anbernic subreddit, and the post is titled RG Cube June 8th launch date, $159.99 after $10 off. So it did launch June 8th for about 160, and now it's probably 170. There are some sales, but it depends on the seller. So for AliExpress, at the beginning of every month, for roughly 8 days or so, they have a sale, and you can probably get it for 130 to 150 if the sale prices are pretty good. So you can get it for pretty cheap. This is why I recommend waiting, because the first batches are the worst, and you can get better batches for much cheaper later on. But yeah, why don't we go more into the RG Cube? So this was posted by Upbeat Serve 6096 in the SBC Gaming subreddit. We have the official unboxing video from Anbernic. This is from their YouTube channel, which is titled Anbernic. And we see all the colorways here. That device looks more pinkish than purple. It's like a combination or in between. It looks like lavender-ish. There are close-ups of the device that people got, and it does seem to be that color. So it's less purple, more towards pink. And I don't know if you're going to like it or not, but just be aware that that's the color you're going to get. Yeah, the retro gray with the red, black, and then white with the rainbow buttons. They all look pretty good. There's also a lot of reviews out now, so if you wanted to take a look at it, we got this one from Retro Game Core. The video is titled Anbernic RG Cube, Charming Little Frankenstein. So yeah, here's a look at how it looks with the 3DS. You can make the top screen take up the entire screen, lengthwise, and then the bottom screen will be a little bit smaller. People seem to like the device for the most part. So we got this post from Russ. His Reddit account is Onions Are Gross, I believe, in the SBC Gaming subreddit. So here's a small update, Retro Game Core's RG Cube and Odin 2 Mini observations. So he went to London recently. He has a vlog up on his channel, and he does seem to like the RG Cube a lot. I think he likes it better than the Odin 2 Mini, in that it seems like a solid handheld, so this might be a good choice for people. Going back to what I was saying about not pre-ordering, right? So there's a severe light bleed issue. I think it has been mostly rectified, but this was pointed out by Taki Udon. The video is titled The King of Niche Retro Handhelds RG Cube Review. And the main reason why there's light bleed is there's this little, I think it's an antenna of some sort, and it connects via a kind of like a push pin. And the plastic housing is pressing down on the LCD panel, causing the light bleed. So you can reduce it a little bit by unscrewing that screw right there. But for the most part, you have to sand this housing down. Now, Anbernic claimed that it was fixed. It'll be fixed for retail releases. But if you take a look at the handhelds people actually received, this one comes from engineering number 753, looking good so far. Yeah, there's the same light bleed here. It's in these two areas. You have more posts, Imaginary Virus 19. They got their light bleed here as well. And here's this guy, Dudelic SPB. They have no light bleed. So the reason why this happens, I'm just going to assume here, but you have to imagine it from a manufacturing standpoint. So when they send release units or review units to reviewers, they don't like magically produce all the handhelds out of nowhere within a week's time. They have to be making it for a long while to get a big enough supply ready for their initial orders, right? So when they have a release unit or review unit made, right, there's a bunch sitting in the warehouse. There's all these boxes, right? And then there's continually making it. There's people here. They might be unhappy. And then they're making handhelds and they're making another batch, right? So these ones, whatever problems the reviewers have, that batch is going to have the same issues. Anbernic's not going to go back and open up all the devices and fix the problem, okay? They're probably going to send out fixes, repairs for free maybe. This happened with the Retro Pocket 4 Pro, where the hinge would die, the spring on it. So there's going to be a sizable amount of devices with the light bleed, whereas the next batches, it might also have the light bleed. It's going to be the next batch after that because they have to change the manufacturing process. You know, they have to get new shells, or they have to change how they assemble it. You know, whatever the issue is, it takes a while before the changes get implemented, if they ever do. So it seems like the light bleed issue has been fixed. So that's why you want to wait, because that initial batch is going to have whatever problems the reviewer saw, and then you have to wait a little bit for them to implement changes into the manufacturing process, and then you're going to get a handheld with the problems fixed. So again, in my opinion, there's only benefits to waiting, plus the cheaper prices, because you're going to see demand drop a little bit, and they're going to be more willing to lower the price, especially when it's a sale on AliExpress. But in my opinion, I think the Cube looks like a great handheld. I would get one. I wouldn't mind a light blade issue because I know how to fix it now. I just sand down the little housing. But yeah, for the price you're paying for, I would expect it to be a little bit more solidly built. But this one, I don't know. Other than the price being high, if it was cheap, I would say this seems like a pretty solid handheld. Except for the fact that it uses Android, and I know that might bother some people. For me, I just don't really care either way. Okay, now we're gonna move into some news about the ROG Ally X. So we have some updates. This was posted on the ROG Global YouTube channel. The video is titled ROG Ally X Full Reveal, Everything We Changed and Why. I think they did a pretty good job, honestly speaking. Like, I know these guys are more like selling the product. That's why I don't trust the official company outlet, because obviously they're only going to say good things about the device. And when I watch the video, it feels more like an advertisement. These guys may be really enthusiastic about the device for sure. But you know, you got to be able to like take criticism and understand the device has flaws. That's okay. Like, no one is perfect. Anyways, when I take a look at it and what they go over, it does seem very interesting in that this Ally X, this revision, seems like a considerable amount of work was put into it. The motherboard, there were significant changes so that the manufacturing process has to change with it. Like I mentioned before, you know, like it just doesn't magically change the device. You have to make changes to how it's made in the factory and with the workers. And so companies want to avoid that as much as possible because it increases costs. But yeah, they changed the thermals, they changed the fans, they made a lot of things lighter and smaller because the battery it has essentially doubled in capacity. So they want to keep the weight around the same level, and it's pretty interesting what they did. They also made changes to a lot of things that users had complaints about, like making the joysticks a lot more repairable. They fixed whatever flaw was with that micro SD card slot. I'm gonna go over that soon as well. But yeah, like it seems pretty interesting. The fans are way smaller, the blades are smaller, but they actually do more cooling, which is pretty interesting. Alright, this was posted by MK Dota in the ROG Ally subreddit. The post is titled LTT. I can't recommend the ROG Ally X. Now, I know some people dislike Linus. I don't care because I just need information. So I don't care where I get the information as long as the information is good enough. And this video goes over it. Man, I don't know, man. The main gist of these videos is like the device is good, but ASUS can't be trusted because of the warranty fiasco. But the thing is, like, many companies suck with the warranty process, you know? Anyways, I'm not giving ASUS a pass here. The main thing that I wanted to pull out is in that video, there's a link to a post describing where the SD card failure comes from. And apparently, it's from a fuse. So everyone was saying that it was due to the heat being piped over the micro SD card slot, which caused it to fail whenever. It's like random when it would fail. So people are like, I don't understand why this is happening. People assume it's the heat. So I thought it was the heat as well, because that was the only thing that made sense. Apparently it's the fuse. And what would happen is the fuse's resistance would increase. So what happens when the resistance increases? The current goes down. If we go back to Ohm's law here, it's V equals IR. So the voltage is going to stay the same, but what happens when the resistance goes up? The current goes down, and when the current goes down, the slot cannot work properly. And so, this is not advisable, but the fix people did was to short it out like this. You don't want to short out a fuse. The reason why the fuse is there is there's a 3.3 volt rail to the SD card slot, apparently. And if there's a short, it'll get super hot, like to the point where it'll burn you. So that's why that fuse is there. If anything happens, if there's a short, the fuse will break and cut off voltage, and then it would save the slot from being burned. Now, this brings up a few questions in terms of the repair facilities process. So I know that a common fix for the micro SD card slot failure is to replace the motherboard. But the thing is, if they knew it was the fuse, why didn't they just replace the fuse? That's very cheap to replace. Like, was there some inherent problem with the motherboard that caused the fuse to fail all the time? Or was it a faulty fuse? So this was a little bit, I don't know, I have a lot of questions because I know that a lot of repair centers are contracted out by ASUS. Like, was the repair facility trying to milk money out of ASUS and the customers? Like, why would they replace the motherboard for something so easy to fix? In fact, a lot of people just reflow the solder around the fuse and that helps it last a little bit longer, but eventually the fuse will go bad. So I'm just like, why did they do such an expensive and unnecessary fix for such a simple problem? Maybe it's me not understanding the true root of the issue here. But yeah, it just brought a lot of questions about the reliability of the people running the repair centers. Like, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, that was a little weird. Something didn't sit right with me when I saw that this was the main reason why it was failing. Yeah, like, why would you replace the motherboard? Anyways, we have a video from Retro Game Core. There's a lot of channels that release videos on it. I think Dave 2 Tech, whatever his channels are, there's a lot of them. A lot of people are covering the ROG LAX. And they show like what's different between the two. And I thought it was fascinating how a lot has changed. And honestly speaking, it does seem like the version of the Ally to get. It seems way better engineered. So if you are considering getting it and you live in North America, Best Buy will release it on July 22nd for $799. Now, I know a lot of people who live in Europe say, why is the pricing in the US a lot lower? People forget that tax is not included in the price. So you can charge or add on at least 10% more. But there are 5 states in the US that don't have sales tax: Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon. So another thing that people living in Europe don't get about the US is the laws are different depending on which state you're going to. There are some federal laws for sure where it's the same in every state, but there's 50 states. The US is huge, geographically speaking is big, and each state is pretty different in terms of the laws. So it's not like all the laws are uniform, okay? Imagine each state as its own country almost, okay? But a pro tip is, if you're visiting the US and you're close to one of these states, you can hop over to the state and you can buy stuff without paying sales tax. So that's what a few of my relatives do. They live in Washington. They'll go down to Oregon and they'll buy stuff and bring it back up to Washington. No sales tax charge. This post kind of goes over the ASUS warranty scandal. This happened after the scandal popped up, so it is happening still, and it is happening in other countries. I believe the OP lives in Spain. The OP is Might Mar, and this was posted in the ROG Ally subreddit. I have to pay ASUS to fix my Ally they broke. So yeah, it's still happening in other countries. You can go read the comments. They say, hey, you should have done this, you should have done that. But the thing is, they went through the official channels and they encountered this problem. So it is still a thing, something to consider. There's a video where ASUS met with Gamers Nexus and they go over their plan on what they're actually going to change. Whether I believe them or not, I don't know, man. It's whatever. For me, what I care is, do I get the device cheap enough and can I fix it myself? Because I'm not going to trust the company to do it for me. But here we got Extreme Machine 2246 being real. The reason why I won't get the new LAX, I'm poor. It's for real, man. Yeah, me too. For me, like, if I'm gonna pay roughly $1,000, I'm gonna get a gaming laptop because I need other functionality from my device. And if I'm gonna be carrying around the Ally and a dock and a battery bank and a keyboard and a mouse and a portable monitor and all these different things, I'm just gonna get a laptop because it's just easier for me to flip it open, start working on it. I need to be able to do stuff on it very easily just by flipping it open. So, editing videos, tinkering around with firmware, doing all that sort of stuff, coding, it's just easier on a laptop. I don't want to set up my Ally everywhere I go. Again, at that point, I'm going to get a laptop. Now, if I wanted a nice portable device to play, while I'm in bed, on the couch, for sure that makes sense if that's the only thing you're looking for. A laptop is not going to be the same. But if I'm looking for more productivity, I'm going to get a laptop. Alright, finally we have a look at the Zotac Zone. So I covered the specs already, but this is interesting. It looks like every other device. All these devices look the same, but yeah, again, it has the dual trackpads. This was posted by Agile Negotiation 30 in the ROGLA subreddit, and the post is titled Zotac Zone Official Specs and Look. Okay, moving on, we got a little bit about the MSI Claw. This was posted by Tiny Independent 273 in the ROG Ally subreddit. The post is titled, Already a new MSI Claw, what does it have to do to beat Ally X? Yeah, I don't know what MSI is thinking, because if you take a look at the article, this was posted in PC Guide. It was written by Eve Hancock, and all we know is that it's the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. It may feature the new Lunar Lake chip and potentially a larger 8-inch screen. Yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I feel like that's doing a massive disservice to the people who bought the MSI Claw. Now, I don't think it's a terrible device, to be honest. It's just that it performs worse in most categories compared to other handhelds. But like, if you bought one and you're happy with it, that's all that matters, right? But it's like, why would you ditch the few consumers that actually support your product by making a new one without going back and making the original one better? This is, just if you take a look at this post, this was posted by Rami Haidafi in the ROGLA subreddit. The post is titled, Seems like the MSI Claw struggles even after all the updates, underperforms versus the ROG Ally. Now, the article is from The Verge, and it was written by Sean Hollister, so I would take it with a grain of salt. But they have some benchmarks here, and it shows that, for some of them, the MSI Claw is performing better, but for the most part, it's like marginal increases, and it's still worse than the competitor for the most part. So it's like, I don't know, man, like, when I think about it, it seems more cost efficient to hire like a really smart engineer to make the firmware better than to engineer an entirely new device that still is going to underperform because you don't have the proper driver or firmware support. I don't know. I'm not a company though, so maybe I could be the person wrong here, but to me it seems more logical to spend a little bit of time, money, and effort making your original device a lot better, because once you have the software or low-level software in place, it's gonna make every other future iteration a lot better because you have something in the production pipeline to make sure that the firmware, the drivers, the BIOS, whatever, all gets the proper support necessary. And if your device is well supported, people will flock to it sooner or later. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's doing a disservice to the people who bought the MSI Claw. Okay, so this is another handheld. This one's interesting mostly because of the price. This was posted in the Legion Go subreddit by expertganache5372. The post is titled XPG Nia Handheld Console Prototype Hands On. My brain died there for a second. So this is sourcing the YouTube video from the channel Hardware Busters, and the screen kind of flips up like this. And they mentioned that the chassis and everything will be open source so people can make mods for it, and they're aiming for a $500 price level. That would be insanely competitive with the specs they tout. I forgot what it was exactly, but it's gonna be comparable to most handheld PCs. So $500 for that might be pretty decent. Alright, for our next handheld, it's going to be a Game Boy Color remake, homage, whatever you want to call it. This was posted by OK Guitar 4120 in the SBC Gaming subreddit. The post title is ModRetro Chromatic O Face. Okay. So the source comes from Palmer Lucky's Twitter. Now, there seems to be controversy surrounding this guy, but it's mostly due to his political opinion, and honestly, I don't care. And there's some posts where people are like, I'm not going to support this guy, I'm not going to give him a single penny. And I was like, it was kind of weird because like there's a lot of hate for this guy, Elon Musk, but people have no problem supporting the CCP. So I find that kind of, I don't know, I find it having double standards, to be honest. Personally, I don't care as long as I get a device that I like. But yeah, the thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about this video was it felt like a complete snake oil salesman. Like, he has these really popular content creators here, like Casey Neistat, I think Logan Paul is in there too. And it's like, you know, if you really cared about this device, you wouldn't use those content creators. Like, you would put it in the hands of people who are experts or like really, really love the Game Boy Color. And I don't really see that here. And this guy keeps saying that, oh, we made design decisions that didn't make sense financially, but we did it to make the best possible device. And when I look at it, I'm like, yeah, so the website is modretro.com, and yeah, it's $200. Like, I don't get it. The FPGA Game Boy is like $70, $80, $90 at most, and that could play the actual cartridges. It's gonna have a better screen. Like, this is a aluminum magnesium body, and it doesn't look very comfortable to hold. It uses 3 AA batteries, so that's a little bit better. But they said the screen is a 1-to-1 replicate of the actual Game Boy Color, so the resolution is the same, the color temperature is the same, everything's supposed to be the same. So we'll see when it comes out. But to the best of my knowledge, even having a metal housing and a screen that's 1-to-1 with the original Game Boy Color, it shouldn't cost $200. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like they added in these catchy words like, oh, the glass is like quartz watch glass. Someone was saying that, you know what, that's just everyday stuff. It's not that special. But yeah, yeah, like, I want one, but not for that price. Like, I feel like this should have been a plastic housing, and they should have made it $70 at most. But yeah, we'll see when it comes out. One cool thing though, that they are selling indie games, and the indie games have physical cartridges. So Dragon Nim is an RPG I was interested in, and I believe it's sold out already, but they have actual physical cartridges now. I think that part is pretty neat. So you might think that's expensive, but that's how much these usually cost, roughly the price that it costs to get these games in terms of the physical cartridge version. Okay, now we're moving on to buyer advice. We'll go over these very quickly. So there's a new version of the Mig Switch. If you don't know what that is a flash card for Nintendo Switch games. And the one neat feature is it can play actual ROM dumps of the cartridges. So you need another tool to dump the ROMs or have your Switch be hacked. But the old version, the problem was, in order to switch games, you would have to take it out, put it back in, wait for the LED to blink, pull it out, and then put it back in again, and it would switch games. And it would switch in its own specific order. It wasn't alphabetic. And so, you know, it was kind of a mess. But now there's a little switch that you push, which is a lot better. But yeah, you still run into the same issue of like, you don't know what game is coming next because it's not in alphabetical order. It's a little weird. But yeah, Taki Wudon covers it on his YouTube channel if you want to check it out. It's essentially the same thing but with a button. I think that is more convenient for sure, but we still have a long ways to go to make it usable, in my opinion. I think you need some sort of interface where you can pick the game that you want. Alright, for the next one, we have this video from the Fox. It's about the AYANEO Pocket S. So I know it's releasing recently. People were debating whether to get it or not. There's a really good Reddit thread where the guy compares it to the AYANEO Pocket Air, and his conclusion is just get the Pocket Air instead because it's going to be better. But yeah, I think he does this cool thing with transitioning from the thumbnail to the intro. He does that in every video recently. It works very well. But his review is pretty okay. After looking at it, I think it's an okay device except for the price. So the problem is that because you're gonna have performance limited due to the thermal performance, it gets pretty warm, and it's gonna be uncomfortable to hold for a long time because it's essentially just a rectangular slab. It does look like a premium device though. That said, it would be nice for 300, 300 or less, not over that though. There's another thing. So people were saying that the D-pad was bad. I don't know who said that because a lot of people said it was okay or it could have been better. I don't think anyone said it was bad from all the reviews I bought. But this was posted by Shadow59 in the SBC Gaming subreddit. The post is titled Pocket S Retail Unit D-pad Impressions. And the video linked is from the YouTube channel For the Next. This guy is cranking out Shurikens, Hadokens. Look at this. This guy just seems really good. I don't think it's necessarily that the D-pad is good. I think it's just that that guy is good at pulling off hot Shurikens. You know. Anyways, there's some reviews there if you wanted to see if the D-pad was bad or not. For my personal opinion, for my own advice, I don't think it makes sense to buy it because, you know, unless you have a lot of money, it's gonna be expensive, and there's a lot better products. Like the Odin 2 is cheaper, it's more ergonomic, and you can play more games better on it. The Odin 2 Mini is going to be decent. There's other devices from AYANEO that kind of fill the same niche. For me, it just doesn't make sense because if you're carrying around your phone, you're essentially carrying two phones at that point. For me, it doesn't make sense to do that. From my standpoint, also the fact that it's gonna be super expensive with the Indiegogo pre-order prices being over, I'm not sure if it's gonna be a worthy purchase. That said though, if you have the money and you want it, go ahead. It seems to be an okay device. It's just that it has some limitations compared to other devices, even from the same company. Okay, now we're going into user creations. We got this post from Gloda in the Miu Mini subreddit. Congratulations to Onion OS for hitting 100,000 downloads today, and that's just for version 4.3. Congratulations, Onion team. You made a fantastic OS. And honestly speaking, the Miu Mini and the Miu Mini Plus, it lasted for so long because they only made two versions of the hardware. I know for the Miu Mini, they have a V1, V2, is there V3? And a V4. But essentially, you can only buy two products, Miu Mini Plus or Miu Mini. And because they were releasing it for such a long time, the Onion team made Onion OS fantastic, and there's a lot of features added. It's honestly one of the most feature-rich operating systems I've used. And because it had time to stabilize, you know, people still buy the product to this day. It's not that the hardware is any good. I mean, the D-pad and buttons I like. But in terms of the processor, it's getting old. In terms of the screen, it's everywhere now. 3.5-inch 480p screen. And, you know, there's nothing really stand out about it. Except for a software now. When it first came out, there are reasons to get it for sure, even without the software. But nowadays, it's primarily because of Onion. I know there's also MinUI and other variants like Horiki, Allium. People use those for sure. But Onion is massive. So I hope for the A30, they do the same thing where they make the hardware better and then just keep selling it for a long time so that any custom operating systems can develop and get feature rich. I hope they take the same approach to the Flip. The one thing that Miu did that other companies don't do is just support their handheld for a long time. And there's not a lot of support being done too. There's a RTC added for the Miu Mini Plus, the new one. The new iterations of the motherboard. But yeah. Also, I saw a rumor post. I'll link that in the next episode if possible. But apparently there's a Miu Mini V5 coming out. So it was from a comment from a dude who was talking to another guy who was making small batches of metal cases for the Miyoo Mini, the OG one. And that guy was mentioning how there's going to be a V5. I don't know what's going to be different about that. It was just rumors. There's no details out, but I'd be interested in seeing what the next version is. I don't know if it's like a temporary, like temporary batch of like metal cases they're making, or if there's anything actually different. Kind of interesting. But yeah, I hope other manufacturers take the same approach. Like Anbernic releases a new handle like every month. Once every month there seems to be a new version, and then they drop support for it. They don't make it better, and they go on to producing a new one. And yeah, you're looking at short-term profit over long-term profit. If anything, Miyoo has proven that you can make one iteration or one version, one main version, and iterate on it and have that be profitable. Okay, we have this post. Sorry, this is bug fixes and updates. I can't see my tab because the webcam is blocking it, so I thought it was user creations. But we got this post from Selfish. It was posted in the SBC Gaming subreddit. He has a YouTube channel if you want to check him out. Can you no longer power off handheld after a custom firmware change? So this guy made a procedure to be able to turn your device off if you change your custom OS on your RGB30 or 20SX. Now, the main fix is to take the battery out for about 20 seconds and then plug it back in. If that doesn't work, is to fully charge it, fully drain it, fully charge it, fully drain it, and then disconnect it and reconnect it. But people may not be comfortable with opening up their handhelds, and I totally get it, because, you know, if you break something by opening it up, it's better not to do it. So this fix may help you guys out. So this is the fix. Do a full install and all updates to your new custom firmware. For example, if you put on ArcOS, you'll most likely have an update to 2.0. After you have completed a full install, take both memory cards out of the device. And you're going to put in the original card that came with the device. And then once you have the card in the device, hit the reset button and wait for it to boot back into Rocknix. So if you don't have a stock card with Rocknix, you can have a card with Rocknix on it. Immediately once rebooted, go to settings and shut down Rocknix. Now place the new custom firmware into the device and then power it on and then shut it down, and then now it should shut down and power up properly. But yeah, Powkiddy, people like their devices, but the QA QC process on it is super sketchy. It's one of the worst companies. So yeah, the RGB30 especially, some people love it, but other people, they get like terrible units, like it's unusable, so understandable. But yeah, if you have issues, you might try this and it may help you out. Okay, now we're going into the RGB30, and these are some nice mods made by IntelliAim in the SBC Gaming subreddit. The post is titled Powkiddy RGB30 Mods. So they remove the stick. Some people really hate analog sticks. I think these are the analog hole covers or plugs made by Ocelot08. They might have made their own, I don't remember. And then they modded the D-pad with the Kapton tape to reduce false diagonals, and they put a little bit of foam on the triggers to make them less rattly, more responsive, more quiet. And they added a rumble motor as well here. So that's pretty nice. So if you have an RGB30 and you're like, man, I don't like the D-pad, I don't like the analog sticks, I don't like the shoulder buttons, you want to add rumble, you can do all those things. So you can check out this post and then see if you can make the same changes yourself if you want to. Alright, speaking of removing sticks, we got this post from Careless Cry 1752. They made an entire case. It looks nice too, transparent green, with the right stick removed. So that looks pretty nice. And this guy made a lot of different cases for the RG35XXH. So they made one without sticks, all white. And they made all white buttons with it as well. That looks pretty clean. And then they made a translucent blue one. And they could have easily made it translucent purple if they wanted to. Those look pretty nice. Like I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind this color. That looks pretty clean. Alright, that's gonna be it, fellas. Sorry for taking so long. Yeah, it's another hour-long episode, but I think after this one for sure now, I said that last time, but for this one for sure, we should go back to shorter episodes. I cleared through a lot of the big news items on my backlog, and now I can pick and choose what I want. There's some interesting SP problems popping up, so I want to go over those for next week or a future episode. And there's some very nice user creations, specifically themes for the RG35XXH, I believe from MUOS I want to cover from one user. Yeah, there's some specific things I want to cover. But yeah, for the most part, I got the bulk of the long news segments out of the way now, so they should be a lot shorter in the future. Anyways, thank you so much for dropping by and watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you guys, want me to cover anything, please feel free to drop a comment. If you want me to change the format up, please feel free to let me know. I do this for fun, so if you want something like drastically different, I might not do it, because the reason why I like doing this is, I still put a lot of work into it, but for the most part, it's chill. It's chill for me to make. I'm just covering the news that I thought was interesting, and it's more like I'm just chatting with people who are dropping by rather than quote-unquote making content. So that's what this segment is for me, and I like the news. I like what I'm doing. I'm getting old. I'm losing my train of thought. Before I keep rambling, why don't we end it there? Thank you so much once again for dropping by. I do appreciate it. And as always, hope you guys are staying safe and staying out there. And catch you guys next time.